In a mature security organization, the moment you report a phishing email, an issue or some type of ticket gets created from that. That issue is typically assigned to an analyst. From there, that analyst is going to spend, on average, about 40 minutes investigating that one email. When the security of the organization is on the line, that level of scrutiny makes sense. Every detail has to be checked. But when you keep those 40 minutes in mind, it becomes clear that phishing has two major costs. There's the obvious one, the risk of a breach if something slips through the cracks. And then there's the quieter one. Phishing steadily pulls precious time and attention away from the security team. At the firm we're talking about today, phishing wasn't a rarity, it was a constant. So much so that they were dealing with roughly 1,000 phishing emails every single month. And at that level of volume, it's no longer a question of if something happens, it becomes a question of when. Now, AI and automation have greatly improved this phishing detection. Analysts nowadays have a lot more content to work with than previously. However, the problem lies in that last part, being manual. When you're working at a scale, this model becomes grueling. This is where MSIAM changes that approach and owns the response and executes it as a system. And in this story we've got today, we're going to break down exactly what happened when an organization made that shift.
Our special interview today is with Moore Abraham, a team lead on customer engagements at Unit 42's MDR team. How bad was the phishing volume actually getting before automation was implemented?
So before automation was implemented for the SBM team, they were essentially handling roughly 30 to 40 incidents a day, which would amount to about 1,000 a month. And for their information security team, the fact that they had to manually review 30 to 40 incidents a day actually prevented them from focusing on some of the other security efforts that they deemed as more important, because they had to spend all this time, manually investigating and attempting to decipher what is like a spam, what is an actual phishing attempt, and what is just like, a user wrongly reporting one. So the situation was quite dire for them, which is why when we went into this, proof of value, the first thing that they asked for is like, can you guys help us automate our phishing incident?
Like they asked you specifically to focus on phishing. So that was like a big problem, I assume?
Yeah, that was probably one of their biggest problems. And they mentioned we have a huge effort, like a project to, cover some of our DLP alerts, but we haven't even had time to go around and set up the products or the detections because we spend all this time, again, like I said, manually going through user-reported emails. And to us, to myself and my colleagues, it made perfect sense that our effort for the sake of that POV should be focusing on attempting to automate their phishing incidents. And so what we did was essentially sit down for what we call a scoping session. We mapped out, okay, what steps are you guys taking manually? We broke it down into 5 steps. It seems to be very redundant and something that can be automated. And then we added one more option for a human in the loop in case the customer wanted manual intervention.
It's important to know that detection wasn't an issue here. You had users flagging these emails by reporting them, and alerts were firing and being sent off to the SOC team for analysis. This is where traditional MDR typically stops, though. Simply identifying and escalating the issue to an analyst. The problem lies on what happened after it was delivered to the SOC team. The process to address these emails went a little something like this. The analyst opens the potential phishing email, checks the headers, checks any links, checks the attachments as well as the sender history, and then they document the conclusions. Do you want to know how long that took? How long that these experts had to spend analyzing emails top to bottom to ensure the safety of the company? Yeah, it's that 40 minutes that I mentioned earlier.
With volume being that heavy, what does that do to analysts and how does it impact their workload?
Right. So you have to look at, I think, 2 different things here. One is, first of all, obviously it's a distraction from some of the more important projects that that the customer brought up. Right. They said there's so much in the pipeline that we want to do, but we just can't get around to it because we spend most of our day manually investigating this incident. And what it does to them is, as analysts, is they're saying that they're basically saying from the moment that I open my laptop until the time I go home, all I have to do is manually review emails, run them through certain enrichment tools. After running them through the enrichment tools, if there's a file attached, I have to go in and manually detonate it. And doing this, 20, 30 times a day. And sometimes I'll find myself, and this is stuff that the customer actually shared, is that, sometimes, if your laptop's stuck, if you find yourself doing these repetitive tasks, A, you're prone to, more human errors, and B, you can't really get to the projects you really want to do, the stuff you really want to build. And at the end of the day, this doesn't only impact you as a person, right? In terms of making your work tedious and repetitive, it also prevents you from, strengthening or improving the security posture of the organization that you work for.
The part that most people miss is that these phishing emails aren't dangerous just because one email gets through. It's dangerous because the analyst's time can slip away. Even with the MDR support, analysts were still responsible for manually investigating and deciding what to do next. So when you have analysts buried under 990 emails that never really escalated, the 10 that might have actually led to something don't look as urgent anymore. That's how these real incidents can slip in. So how did the team go about addressing this problem? Well, instead of hiring more analysts or adding another inbox tool to the long list, the team did something different. They reached out to us and handed the problem over to MSIAM, not just for monitoring, but to engineer the response itself. Instead of these user-reported phishing emails being treated as a ticket, it registered it almost as a trigger. When an email got reported, MSIAM started taking a look. They began by pulling context from Microsoft 365. The user risk began to be evaluated in real time, the IP reputation was checked. Based on the collection of all of that information, the severity would be calculated automatically. This wasn't an analyst reviewing alerts. It was Managed XSIAM, executing a playbook that experts had already designed, tested, and tuned. There was no longer waiting. This decision was made swiftly, all by MSIAM.
A lot of people tend to be nervous about handing some of the reins over to MSIAM, like trusting that automation. So what did it take for the team to feel confident letting MSIAM act without human decision?
Right. And in that sense, even if I were to, before, diving into the specific customer, right, we're talking about, a lot of customers tend to develop this trust over time. So whereas initially they'll allow us to help them with automating the enrichment piece, they will still want to do a manual response. And as they, as the trust grows and as they get themselves familiarized with our methods and practices, they will slowly start trusting us. And we've had, just recently, right, a healthcare customer just hand over the reins of some of their response actions to their phishing playbook, exactly because they've developed this trust with us across, several months worth of engagement. With the customer specifically that we're referring to with the phishing incidents, they came from a point where they didn't really have a lot of choice, unfortunately, right? They were at a point where, like, we're heading out to the holidays. We're not sure how we're going to handle this volume of alerts or incidents, coming even throughout the holidays, because, attackers never rest. And so they were like, they said, you know what, we want to see what you guys are capable of. We're going to give you full control over this process, and let's see how it goes.
When MSIAM believes an email to be high risk, it doesn't escalate it or wait for confirmation. It just acts and deletes the message. This isn't just from that one inbox either, but from every inbox within the company. That's the key difference here. MDR alerts humans to take action. Managed XSIAM is trusted to take action itself at machine speed and enterprise scale. What used to take these analysts 40 minutes to do on their own is now being reduced to 3 minutes. Remember the scale of the phishing emails that they were dealing with? Those emails were being addressed hundreds of times within the month. This ran quietly and consistently in the background, while the SOC could focus on the bigger issues that were out there.
Was there a point when their SOC team realized how powerful MSIAM was handling these requests?
Our goal was to have this automation up and running within 14 days or 2 weeks of starting the POV, the proof of value. And we actually had it live within less than roughly 10 to 12 days after the initial scoping session. And, initially we got on a call with them and we showed them the automation piece, right? How we're automatically enriching the incidents, how we extract the IOCs and the headers and present it over to them. And they were initially impressed. But where it really hits the spot was, like I said, I would guess 2 scenarios here. One, when we caught the first actual malicious phishing attempt, right, based on our own enrichments using some of actually PAN's tools to determine whether or not the email was indeed a phishing incident. And then the second one, and this is where it really hit home with them. They came back from they went on roughly 10, 12 days right off towards the end of starting Christmas, really, and until New Year's. And they came back after a week and a half out of the office, and they see, I think it was around 10 high-severity incidents that we actually caught and completely and blocked automatically. And they essentially they didn't have to do anything manually. And they go into the office and they see, oh, wow, you guys handled 400 incidents over the course of a week and a half. 10 of them were true positives, and we didn't have to do anything, right? You performed the enrichment, you performed the response, you blocked these senders from our organization, you deleted the emails across all of the organization, right? So other users may not potentially click those when they come back from the holiday, and we had to do nothing because we were out of office. So that is the part where it really clicked, and they're like, oh wow, this actually works.
As time went on, the impact of MSIAM was undeniable. The mean time to resolve dropped by more than 90%. This meant that hundreds of hours a month were being given back to the SOC. This wasn't because analysts were working faster, but because they were no longer doing work that could simply be automated, standardized, and enforced at scale. With MSIAM in their stack, phishing can be one less thing that they have to worry about, while the experts can focus on more meaningful threats. These attackers are hoping that someone gets a little too tired to report those emails, or that an inbox gets ignored for a little too long. They want these attempts to blend in and go unnoticed. The user reporting of these attempts stopped being a waiting game, and instead, MSIAM took over and took care of the process end to end. This is where Managed XSIAM goes beyond traditional MDR. It doesn't just support analysts, it also removes an entire class of work from their queue. In a world where attackers are moving quickly and quietly, you need a tool that will do the same. My name is Caden, and thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay secure. I'll see you in the next one.